Hello guys, it's Jo and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a quick video about different types of stamp carving material, and in particular I wanted to show you why it is I don't like this Speedy Cut material for stamp carving. I wanted to compare it to some other ones that I carve much more frequently, and I have a few pieces of those materials here to show you. So Speedy Cut is a material that is made by Speedball, which is a very popular and common maker of carving materials, and they do a lot of interesting like they do calligraphy and other types of arts, and it's very nice. But they make a few different carving materials, and this is one of them. It's Speedy Cut, and their packaging has for it saying that it's great for beginners, printmakers, and stamp makers. These high density rubber blocks make carving fast and easy. So I really don't like it. I bought a small block of it to show you with today, but that is one of the Speedball blocks. This is a teeny piece of Speedy Carve. So this is also made by Speedball. It's also known sort of commonly as the pink stuff by many carvers, and it's if you have a choice between the two, this is the one I would recommend getting. It's changed formulations a couple times in the past, and it's become very floppy, which is what I don't like about it. Here's a bigger piece, and it wibbles too much for me, and it makes it hard to use if you don't mount it as a stamp. So that's that one. I also have another North American style little shard here. This is Soft-oleum, and I buy this at Above Ground Art Supplies in Toronto, and if you can see, it actually has bubbles in it, and you can actually feel that when you carve, so not ideal, but it actually is quite thick, and it actually makes for a pretty good carving material, particularly for larger blocks. So I'll show you that one. I also have some Japanese material. So those ones are all from, you can get sort of by companies in North America. These other ones all come from Asia. So there's this remnant piece here. This is often called like a sandwich material. There's no brand name on it. It does come from China, and you can find it on eBay, sometimes on Amazon, and places like that. And this is my sort of go-to because it hits the sweet spot for cost and durability. So I'm going to show you that one. There's also this one. This is also a Chinese made material that doesn't have a brand name. It's a little bit thicker than this material, but and it's a solid color. This one's a little more expensive than this one, and I think it's because it's just by weight, it's physically more material they have to use, but I don't think it's always worth the price difference, so I do prefer the sandwich type, but they carve very similarly. I have this, which is a proper block. This is also not got a name. It doesn't have a manufacturer. This is a crystal carve. It's called it's variously called different things. I've had, I think, a video on this before, and you can see the shadows behind it. It's not perfectly clear, but it is translucent, and you can see sort of shadows through it as I move it. It's a little thicker. It's kind of expensive for what it is, and I find it tricky to carve, so I'm going to show you why in a second. This is a piece, a remnant piece from a Daiso block. It's a lot thinner, but it's got the 3 colors, and it was from Daiso, which is a 100 yen shop, so it's actually quite inexpensive if you can get it, but you gotta pay for shipping, which is obviously the downfall. But this stuff is very durable, and I quite like it. And then my favorite type of material, but very costly, is this is like the Horonavi material by a company called Seed. This is one of the special edition colors that they have for different carvers. It's quite thick, but it doesn't have a lot of bend to it. It's very soft, and it's a very clean carve to it, and it stamps really easily. So that you can sometimes get it on Amazon in their basic colors. If you want the special edition ones, you have to order it straight from Japan, but I love to carve with this stuff. So for today, I'm actually going to use a design sheet that I have that comes with my Learn to Carve set on Etsy, and I'm going to show you how that carves on all these different materials. So I'm just going to go ahead and transfer those, and I'll be right back. So we're back, we're transferred. Just for the record, I used the acetone transfer to get everything over, And as you can see, pretty much they've all come out quite nicely with that. I have a tendency to use too much acetone, which you get the little smears a little bit sometimes. So you can see here, particularly on the Speedy Carve, that I smeared it over there. But other than the clear Carve, which you can see it's a little difficult to see on there, it all came out really nicely. So all of these are really great for acetone transfers using toner printings of the design. So as we get started, I want to show you how it carves with both a knife and with a gouge so that you can compare each of these types of material. So why don't we start off the one which I don't like. So when you touch it, it feels kind of powdery. So this is, like I said, this is the Speedy Cut. It feels powdery, but that's actually the material already starting to come apart. And when you rub it, see that? It actually comes right apart. So don't do that, because you will dust it to get rid of it and you'll keep making more and it just gets worse and worse. So just so you can see how this works, it is really soft. You know, I'm a big believer that you need to have a soft to carve material so that you don't hurt yourself. So from that perspective, the knife carving of it is really nice. You saw how easy that came out. It really was like butter to carve. Same thing for this one with a gouge. It slides through really easily, but the problem with the gouge as you're sliding, you can sort of see it there, it's already making crumbles. Do you see that inside? So as you're slicing, it's actually crumbling it at the same time. And obviously that's a problem, because that'll gunk up your ink and it actually degrades the stamp over time. And that primarily right there is why I don't like this material. It's very, oh, look at that. It's coming apart as you carve it. So that's the Speedy Cut. So Speedy Carve is much nicer. This stuff, it feels more like there's some kind of polymer in it. It actually, if you got this wet, it would slide. I'm rubbing it just as hard as the other, and no, it's all in my hands. There's a little bit of pilling and mostly cat hair, but it really doesn't come apart like that. This one is nice and soft as well. So you can see here that you can slice really nicely with the knife, not a lot of pressure to do it. It's when, and people tell me, oh, it scares me that you carve in your hands like this. If I was putting lots of pressure there, and then it jumps out and slices my thumb open, that's material you don't want to use. You want a nice sharp knife and soft material. And so this is great for it. So you can see it made a nice line there. It's not crumbling, so I'm carving it. Very important. So let's see how it works with the gouge. And there's a lot of people who use this as just the material that they use for all stamp making, and I can see why. It's readily available, and this can be found at most carving stores, most craft stores. So it's easy to acquire. You can see there, it didn't crumble or rub or make any of that problem. So there you go. You can see that right there. The last North American one that I have is this Soft-oleum. Remember the one with the bubbles? The bubbles! Unlike Arrow, that's not something that I particularly want. This one, it stays still when you carve it. The pink stuff kind of doesn't. It moves a little bit. But you can see that the knife doesn't actually move smoothly through it. It kind of jerks along, and you have to use weird and varying pressures for it. I don't love that. Also, sometimes when you're going around the curves, this material bends as you cut it. You see that? It bends up. So it can leave you with ragged, oh, let me show you there, ragged edges as you do that. So that's not ideal. However, carving with a gouge in this material is actually quite nice. You can feel the bubbles, but it's a smooth cut, and you can see the bubbles in there. There's actually two sides to this material. This is the rough surface side. You want to use the smooth side. And I don't particularly use this stuff either. What I use it for are the bigger block type carving projects that I do. So if you have something a lot bigger and you want to make prints on gift wraps, that kind of thing, that's what I'd use this for, because it is less expensive. So moving on to the stuff that has come from Asia. This is the sandwich material. And like I said, this has become a bit of my go-to material to use because I like how it carves and I like the price point for it. What I also like about it doesn't move away from the knife as you're carving it, so it stays put and you can carve into all of the little corners without worrying about getting morbid carvings out of it. So there you go. And I didn't carve it properly, so this is release. I blame the camera because I'm looking through the camera at this while I'm doing it. So the layered aspect of this, it's really nice because it makes it pretty, but you wouldn't want to rely on that to show you where you've carved because it's actually quite thick. So on a smaller design, you don't see it as much. For gouge carving, it's actually really nice as well. Carves very smoothly. And you can see there, oops, it doesn't pill or do any of that. So that's how that one carves. The next one up is the solid version of the same thing. This one is very similar to the sandwich cut. It, to me, feels, I don't actually know, so I don't have a lot of information on this stuff, but the way it carves to me seems exactly the same as the sandwich formulation of the rubber. It's just that this stuff is thicker. So it doesn't bend in your hand as much just because it's thicker, and it's all one color. So it carves really nicely for both knife and for gouge. So I'll show you. See, it doesn't make any pilling. And so from that perspective, it's quite nice. You can see that there. Oops. But it doesn't have the two-layer formulation where you can sort of see some of the base of that. The next up is the crystal carve. So this one I find a little bit more difficult because the crystal, you can really tell that it's translucent when you go to make your cuts. So I find it's harder to put the knife into the material. Like, it takes more physical pressure. And you can see that as I'm making the cuts, there's a change in the color of the material. Like it whitens up a bit, so you can sort of see underneath. If you're doing something really detailed, it makes it difficult to see, and you can't see the depth, or at least I can't as easily as with the solid colored ones. So it's really cool. It makes an interesting carving, particularly when it's done, but it makes it trickier to carve. However, having said that, I mean, the knife and the gouge make nice smooth cuts, but you have to use a lot of pressure, and when you use the pressure, it's a little bit more dangerous. Oops, there you go, you can see it. It's a little bit more dangerous in case it skips out and you stab yourself, but also when you're pressing so hard, and I'm putting a lot of pressure in it, I can feel the material bending. So the lines don't end up being straight when that happens. So if you're making a design, unlike these mushrooms that are really straight, this can be a problem because they won't turn out that way. Next up is this little piece, this little hedgehog from on the Daiso material. And this has two different color sides layered. Sometimes I found the yellow side to have some bumps in it, and this piece doesn't, so I can't really show you, but it's, for whatever reason, the blue side is almost always like perfect. This stuff is a pleasure to carve. It's the closest, in my view, to the seed material in terms of how it carves, and for 100 yen, if you're in Japan, or I know there's some Daisos in Australia and in places like the West Coast in the US. I think there's some Daisos down there. If you have this material for 100 yen, which is I think a little over $1, it's just a pleasure to carve. So you can see it came out really easily, and there's no pills, no pilling. The gouge also works really good with this material, and very little pressure to carve that out. So if you can get your hands on this, it comes in smaller pieces, but it's very inexpensive, great to carve. Finally, my favorite, the seed material, and this just is perfection for me. It doesn't move when you slice. The slicing is the softest of any of them, so there's very little pressure, and it's just a pleasure to carve with both a knife and with the gouge. So I've had coffee so my hands shake, but it's just so nice to carve. No pilling, it's nice and thick. It has enough of a bend to it that it makes a good stamp. So that's the difference of these. I'm just gonna finish carving these, and then I'm gonna show you how they print and how well they last under pressure. All right, I'm back. Everything is carved. We've got the Speedy Cut right here. This is the Soft-oleum. We've got the solid colored Chinese material. We've got the 2-layered seed Horinavi material. Speedy Carve, the pink stuff. We've got a very difficult to see mushroom in the clear cut. We have the sandwich material mushroom, and we have a cute little hedgehog on the Daiso material. So I'm going to show you what they look like when you stamp them up, ink them up. So if you are going to use this material, one of the things you should keep in mind is don't rub like that, because that pilling effect is just going to get worse and worse. So you can just pat them down with the ink like this. Because as you can see, there is a lot of that pilling going on there. But, you know, it does keep the ink nice, so it's not too bad, and it gives a good impression. All of these actually have a fairly good ink holding capacity, so it's actually not too bad. So that looks cute. This one is the seed material. This is the Soft-oleum. I'm sorry, the camera mount is on the table, so it's shaking with all of this. This is the Speedy Cut. Then we have this mushroom here. Nice mushrooms up here in the corner. Came out really nice. And we have the little mushroom here and down there. And finally, the little hedge under the leaves. So that's just quick stamping. The little leaf pile there. And you know, they all carve nicely if you're used to carving them, but one of the things, if you're going to keep them over time, is making sure that they don't pill up and break. This one, you can do some pretty aggressive rubbing to it. The Daiso stays fine. This one, you'd be worried about those dots coming out. They don't. This stuff is like a hunk of plastic. It doesn't pill, or nothing happens to it when you rub it. Same with the rest. This guy though, there, it rubs right apart. I don't know what it is about this stuff, and this right here is the problem. And of course, you're not going to rub your stamps like this, but they start cracking, particularly over time as they dry a bit, and you know, they come apart right like that. None of these other ones do. So, you know, this is the same brand but different stuff. It doesn't. It stays together. Same with the stuff that comes from Asia. Doesn't rub apart. Pills a little bit. You can see that, but really not much. The seed stuff, I initially thought when I first started using this would actually rub right apart. It doesn't. It's really strong. And even the Soft-oleum, which is not the best, it stays right together. So that's why I said, even though this one is meant for stamp carving, it really just comes right apart. So I really don't recommend it. And for smaller details, they come apart so easily. So, destruction of the stamp. I've never actually wrecked a whole stamp all at once like this before. So, my recommendation, stay away from that one. Try all kinds of different stamp carving materials. You never know what you're going to get and what you're going to like, and there's so many cool formulations out there. Stay away from this one, and I think you'll have a good time. Leave me a message down below about which one you like, which is your favorite, and if you have any particular questions, I'm happy to help. So you can leave me a message about which one you'd like me to, or what answers you'd like me to provide in the next video. So thank you so much for joining me today. You can find me on Instagram at Cuts and Scrapes Etsy shop, or you can visit my Etsy shop directly. Click subscribe and there will be definitely more videos in the future. Thanks guys, bye.